Chris, I hope you're having a great Wednesday afternoon. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Hey, good to be with you, Ryan, as always.
Hey, Chris, we were just talking about Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher and the transition there. Here's his schedule. Texas State's easy, second game of the season at Clemson, Lamar, Auburn, Arkansas at home, Alabama at home, at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, University of Texas, San Antonio, South Carolina, ending up with Georgia and LSU. So they play three of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country in Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson. That's a bear. That's a tough schedule.
Oh, it is. It is. It's a brutal schedule. I'm trying to think. South Carolina plays Alabama, of course, Georgia, A&M, Clemson. That those two schedules jump out at me as really brutal. When you're talking about games that are, it's going to be pretty big upsets to win some of those games. So while I like where Jimbo's got the program headed, I don't know that they can go on the road and beat Clemson. We'll see. They played them well last year. It's tough to, they played them, I thought, very well at College Station. Go on the road at Clemson early. I don't think it's the type of game that Clemson's going to have a letdown. Clemson has their letdown against, Syracuse or somebody. I think Clemson, with their talent, even though they're replacing a lot of guys, it's going to be tough for them. So I don't like their chances there. I don't like their chances against Alabama. Georgia and at LSU, I'm going to tell you, I look and I think those are 4 losses right there. And I think with a really good season, and if they're really improved, they're probably going to have 4 losses. So I think it's that difficult of a schedule. That's kind of how I see it.
Welcome to the SEC. You're not in the ACC anymore.
That's right. No, there's no question. It's and listen, I think that they're in a position where I think in how they're recruiting and what they're doing, I think they've got as dangerous a program as there is to challenge Alabama in the West, but they're a long way away from Alabama. Make no mistake about that. I think that they're maybe gaining some gradual ground against an LSU, but against an Alabama, there are ways to go.
Yeah, and Chris, when we look at the second place in the SEC West, who is it? Who's going to fill there? Is it LSU?
Well, I think you look at schedules. I think basically you eliminate, in my mind, A&M because of their schedule. I don't know what to make of Auburn, to be quite honest with you. I like their talent on defense. I don't know what they're going to get on offense. I think they've got depth at running back, quarterback situation. I just don't know. I think Oregon game could go either way. And listen, the A&M game, Florida on the road at LSU, that's ultimately going to decide it. Probably the winner of Auburn LSU. I think that's the most likely, winner, or the second place team, I should say, in the West. Maybe I'd give a little bit of an edge to LSU. I think overall LSU's schedule's a little bit more favorable, but I think it's pretty close.
I want to go to Clay Helton at USC for a couple of minutes because the debate is the hot seat. Who has the hottest seat in college football? Everybody's talking about USC and Clay Helton. What do you see in the Trojans in 2019?
Well, like Clay, know his dad. I just, I don't think he's up for this job. I think it's a very unique job. It's clearly one of the best jobs with a lot of resources, and they are the program out west. It is the bell cow program, and it's the program that the Pac-12 is completely built around. And you have to, if you grow up and you're a really good prospect in California, you got to beat USC on a kid. Period. It's as simple as that. They're not getting it done. I think it's a difficult job. I'm not crazy about his staff. I don't think the team has been very well coached. I think recruiting is okay, but not up to USC standards. And I think they're going to struggle. I think he's going to have a rough go of it again this year. I think they'll win games. They'll go to a bowl game, and that's not good enough at USC. The issue is I think they probably should have made a move last year. They've just been as goofy as anybody with their athletic director hires. You got to be a Trojan. they are more stuck of that. You go back, remember when you had to be a Bear Bryant disciple to even be considered at Alabama until, they went off the reservation and went with Curry. That was kind of how that is, right? Well, at USC, there's no place that's more provincial than they are. I mean, it starts with their athletic directors. And, Lynn Swann, Pat Hayden, they're Trojans, and that's really it. Now, Pat's a really bright guy, but none of those guys have backgrounds as administrators. And they're basically hired to just kind of, keep the Trojan family happy, which that's really big. Now, you don't hear a lot about it because the passion within that Trojan family is big, but in L.A., it gets swallowed up by everything else that goes on. But it is very, very political, and Lynn Swann kind of went against a lot of his people and big boosters that wanted to make a change with Clay Helton. And I think barring a great season, which I don't see, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think Utah's, certainly better coached and may finish ahead of USC in the South. We'll see. But it's difficult. They got Stanford. They play obviously because they play an extra conference game. There's some challenges. They go on the road to Washington. They've got Utah. Got to go to Notre Dame. I think they're 4 losses on that schedule, and I think anything in that range and 5 losses, it probably means that there's a new coach there.
We're talking to Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com, where you can hang out and listen to some of the great podcast work they're doing. Locked On SEC podcast, Locked On Big Ten, Pro Football Film Room podcast, latest podcast on the right-hand side of the page, LandryFootball.com. Landry Football also on the Twitter account. When you look at Alabama and you look at Nick Saban, is it simply a mental game to get over the Clemson loss of 44-16? Is that really the only doubt you have if they're really going to be able to pick themselves up off the mat? Is this the best roster in college football?
I think I've taken a closer look at it. I think that it is. I think Clemson can match it. I think they're very close, but I think that Alabama's certainly doesn't take a backseat to Clemson. I'll put it that way. Now, I think that under Nick Saban, this program has responded best after a loss. You don't want to have to go through the loss, but when you go through the loss, God help you if you got to face them, because now he's got their attention. I don't care who you are, whether you're Paul Brown, Vince Lombardi, you name it. Players tend to not tune you out, but they tend to not listen as intently when you win. The things that you need to do to get better are often overlooked because you're winning. And when you lose, and certainly when you lose decisively, it is a humbler, and that's when players more likely listen to you. In fact, I can tell you that a number of great coaches, including Parcells was a bear to be around after you won. I mean, that's what he did. After you lose, and if you even notice with Saban with this, you ever watch him, how cranky he gets when they're winning and guys are becoming a little sloppy? He starts to jump people's rear end. You ever notice when things are going bad, what he does? He's clapping. Now that's not the time. It's the opposite of what fans think. Fans raise their hands up, they're booing, they're mad when things are going bad. But that's fans. That's what you do. As a coach, players need help. They need guidance at the biggest moment. And I think right now he's got their full attention, and all the things that he said, particularly the players that are coming back, will know that if you don't do these things every day in the off season, every day during the season, regardless what the scoreboard says, that what happened in last year's championship game can come up and get you again. And remember that. So I think the biggest advantage to Alabama's success this year is how the last season ended. I think that's a big boost. I don't think getting their confidence level up is an issue. I think getting their confidence level down in understanding what they need to do and how they need to do it and how dedicated they need to be, that is where they were a bit lacking last year. And the loss, again, tends to change that attitude. So I think they're in even better position as a result of it. And I think their schedule, we talked about some tough schedules. We know that Alabama does not have that. So they can work through this schedule and get better and better without the real threat of losing, so that they can go through it, likely unbeaten, and, hopefully be a much better team for them, hopefully be a much better team by the end of the year than they will be in September or early October.
Chris, when you look at this team and you look at Kyle Flood on this offensive line, he comes from the NFL. Do you hear good things about Kyle Flood as offensive line coach? Will there be a change-up from him and Brent Key philosophy, the way they do things? Obviously, Nick Saban made a move, and Brent Key ends up at Georgia Tech as the OC. But Alabama's offensive line really hadn't been, in your face kind of, 2012. We've been slowly trickling downhill. Nick Saban makes adjustment, hires Kyle Flood.
Well, I think a lot of that's because they're throwing the football a lot more, and that, as I've said before, you lose your identity. You become more of a finesse team when you throw it. That's the innate nature of, if you're going to throw it 45 times a game, then what you're doing as a pass protectors is you're not coming off the ball and driving people off the ball. You're pass protecting. You're backing up, and you're in the pass protection mode. When you come off the ball, then you start to establish yourself and be that physical dominant team. And so you're right in that assessment, and that's part of what we've talked about of, what I think Nick Saban wants to get back into, and that is to be a more physical, controlling the line of scrimmage type of team. That's what Kyle is. That's what Kyle teaches, and he's very, very he's always taught guys, the physical, come off the ball, run blocking group. I think it's a talented group. I think it's, in fact, in some cases a little young, but I really like what they have. I think at tackle, Leatherwood is really outstanding. I think Wills is a powerful kid. I think that they're very talented, in some cases a little young at guard, particularly in the backup spot, but I think they've got quality there, that the 3 or 4 deep that I like. I think at center they're very talented too. So, no, I think they're really capable of being a little bit nasty and more physical in the run game. I think they've got it in them, but that is going to be determined by how committed are they going to be to the running game. You can take the most physical guys. If you drop back and throw it 50 times a game, you're going to lose some of that physicality. There's no doubt about that. So I think that is the plan going in, and it's certainly what Kyle believes in and what he's taught throughout his days. I think Kyle's a really good line coach, and I think he's real physical and he's tough. And he's had a background, as a head coach, and kind of has the real feel overall, the overall feel and picture of, what it's supposed to look like and where some of the pitfalls might be.
Chris, you did a podcast a couple of days ago on understanding a quarterback's pre-snap read. I know there's no way to get into that completely. I would invite people to go and download it. Listen, I set my iTunes up. You can download the podcast automatically, when you hit a Wi-Fi signal, and it doesn't use any of your data, but you can download it. It's great material. But kind of give us an understanding of the pre-snap. And my question was, when you look at a quarterback that maybe goes to his pre-snap, Tua was criticized for this. How do you keep a defensive coordinator from daring those quarterbacks? Hey, throw it here, show you once before the snap, and then maybe fall into a different position?
Well, I think, first of all, it starts from how you prepare and what the game plan is. But what you've got to do is you've got to identify the front, you've got to identify the coverage, and you've got to, in some cases, you don't even call a specific play, but you have a check with me option, which in college it's a little less prevalent, but basically you'll have the possibility of 1 or 2 possible pass plays or run plays, and you have to make that decision. So let's just say it's I weak right with 21 personnel and a check with me run. Now the offense gets into the formation, and with the help of the center, they'll find 2 safeties on the field, the strong safeties on the tight end side, the free safeties on the side of the X receiver. The quarterback wants to see if the safety's buzzing down into the box to stop the run. So he goes into a fake cadence, threatens to snap the ball at any time, trying to determine which side of the defense will have the extra defender. Once he identifies that, he calls the play to the opposite side. So, he may go check 24, then he'll run to the B gap on the right side with the 2-back into the 4 hole, or he'll check 23 where he runs the same play going to the left. But that's all predicated on what the defense is doing. And all this is done while the clock's going down, but you're trying to get the defense to kind of show their mail, so to speak, kind of show what they might do. So it's basically understanding the concept and understanding what you're supposed to look for, and then what are the play options. A lot of what you see in college, including with Tua, is they look over to the sideline and they make the adjustments to them. So a lot of what is being done and what I explained is what a lot of quarterbacks have to do. But in college, a lot of that's done for them on the sideline. And that is a big part of the college game, and that kind of limits the responsibility on the quarterback. But now the post-snap decisions, which is something else I went into, that is something that the quarterback is all in, and he has to learn. So helping him sometimes with pre-snap decisions gives them a couple of options post-snap, but it is really important, A, that they protect the football and know where they're going with the football, but not dictating and teeing off where they're going with it. So those are the things that just takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience. And it takes a lot of poise. And when you have a lot of talent, you tend to want to go for the big play, but sometimes the best play that you make are the ones that you don't make. And you understand that every defense is designed to take away certain things, but they leaves themselves vulnerable in other areas. Understanding where the defense is vulnerable, which some people like to say, take what the defense gives you, that's what that means. Is so be patient, and you don't have to always make the deep throw downfield. Sometimes the big throw is just the check down that'll extend the drive, and it'll be safe, and those things tend to wear down defenses and frustrate defenses a lot more than the quick score that sometimes it's a little bit risky that people love and cheer when it works. When it doesn't, and maybe when you can't protect leads, it's frustrating. Well, this is part of the reason why. And I do think that in college football at the highest level, which Alabama is, I think there's an inherent advantage because of what they do in recruiting that puts them on the highest level to where, quite frankly, if they play a little more risk-averse, then I think their chances of losing are reduced significantly even at the highest level because they match up so well. You may have to do some things a little bit more creatively against a Clemson, against a Georgia than you would against most of the teams on your schedule. But I think that that being prudent when you take those opportunities is pivotal. So, listen, I think that Alabama wins most of their games, what they're doing right now. Like this past week, it's been a great 2020 class, but this past week was phenomenal for Alabama. And it's likely going to get even better, as I expect that they're going to get Zach Evans, but they're adding with Will Allen adding another defensive end. They're just loaded, and right now I think they're having as good a class as anybody in the country. That's how Alabama does it, and to me, I think playing to that strength is what you want to do, and not play to the strength of just, hey, we've got a great quarterback, we're going to play to him. I think you got to play to the overall strength of the team. Other programs have to rely on a great quarterback to kind of pull them out of fire, whereas I think Alabama doesn't have to do that, and I think they got away from that a little bit because they have such a big-time weapon at quarterback.
Chris, is there always something in a defense? Like when you say take what the defense will give you, we're actually talking to John Parker Wilson about that, one of these Nick Saban quarterbacks. We all hear him say it. Is there always something there that you can find?
There is if you have enough time to diagnose it and you can diagnose it quickly enough. So, sometimes most of the times in defense, the college defenses will show their hand before snap. A safety will cheat up a little bit. But obviously at the highest level, and this is mainly in the NFL, it's why the adjustment's that much bigger, is defenses will stem their front, meaning they'll come out and they'll show one look, pre-snap. And as it gets lower into the clock, so you get down to 8, 9, 7, 6, 5, you change your front, all of a sudden the quarterback doesn't have as much time to change the play and adjust to it. So, yes, there are always opportunities, but can you find it quickly enough, and can you block it well enough up front to have enough opportunities to find that open option? So, and listen, sometimes you have the right look and the receiver doesn't run the right route, or he doesn't run it well enough, or he doesn't spot open well enough, or a back misses a hole. So you still have to execute, but a lot of times failed execution on offense will bail the defense out. So a lot of times the play is there, but you don't execute it. Even when the quarterback does diagnose it right, you got to be able to execute it. So, yeah, to answer your question, there are absolutely ways to attack it. But when you can bring a lot of pressure and you don't give the quarterback time and you got maximum guys in coverage, that's a lot tougher, to take advantage of it. And if you got better athletes, well, they may find a guy on a check down, but if you've got really good athletes that can cover it, it's a problem. And I think that's what you saw last year with Clemson in the championship game. There were opportunities, but they were closed up so quickly. Tua couldn't just hang with the football and create and make plays like he did against Ole Miss. It's against Clemson, and they got those really good pass rushers, and they got a lot of them, and they got good cover guys because they can play maximum coverage. So guys are not that open, and he's looking and holding it, and it's it's too much pressure. He can't find the open guy. It's not there quick enough because the pressure's in his face. Well, the pressure wasn't there as steadily in the week in, week out. So the opportunities are there, but against the better teams, the better athletes, the weaknesses, so to speak, are fewer, and it can be covered up with really good athleticism, and that is ultimately what wins. Good coaching combined with good players. You got to have players, but you got to coach those players up, and you got to get those guys in a position to make plays, and you got to scheme up as well. But it starts with players. There's only so much you can do with minimal personnel, and the better program. That's why we see the best teams consistently year in and year out or in the chase for the championship.
Hey, Chris, final question. We've got about a minute and 30 seconds here left. Do the coaches like this official visits? This is the second consecutive year they've done that, where allow official visits this time of the year. Do coaches like this during the vacation time, official visitors coming to campus?
Well, it's just a necessary evil of the early signing day. You pretty much have to have it now. Alabama's working on like 20 commitments. They're almost done. I mean, it's important because, A, this is when you have camps. So you bring a guy in at camp time, and maybe you haven't offered him a scholarship, but it's contingent upon how he does at camp, and you offer him. You get a chance to evaluate him. So you get a lot done, and you offer it, and you move on and make that decision. In the case of where you've already offered a scholarship to a guy, sometimes it's the last stage for the player to commit while he comes on campus. I think it's a necessary part of the current calendar, because if you don't do it now, you get too close to fall practice, and what are you going to do with official visits during the fall? I mean, understand this, that during the fall, all those kids can do is go to a game. I mean, there's not a whole lot of time that a Nick Saban can spend with a player in October on a Friday. He just doesn't have that as he would in May or, June or, certainly in January when it's like, well, guess what? With signing day being in December, everything's moved up. June has become a huge, huge month for getting it out of the way before their senior year in high school and before you get too busy when you can't really handle it. And if you want to get an official visit, now's the time to do it. You can spend all the time on campus. You can spend all the time with the coaches where they can sit there and show you on film how you're going to be part of the defense or the offense. You can't do that as much during the football season. And support staffs just don't make up for the head coach and coordinators, which are too busy preparing for the upcoming week's opponents in the season.
Chris Landry, he helps us get through these long June days and gives us about 30 minutes each and every Wednesday. But if you're looking for one of those 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, there's always some great content. Listen to the free podcast every day on LandryFootball.com, from college football, including the new daily SEC and the Big Ten podcast, to the NFL, deep into the scouting and coaching world. It's all there. LandryFootball.com. You get a complete breakdown of college and NFL rosters from a detailed film room analysis. You get the player grades, learn how the coaches and scouts evaluate players as they prepare for the upcoming season. Take advantage right now of the scouting season sale going on right now at LandryFootball.com. You get over 50% off for less than a magazine subscription. You can truly get that inside the game of football. If you like football, you're going to love LandryFootball.com. And do not forget, on the right-hand side, about middle of the way down, it says subscribe to the War Room. You drop your email, they'll send you something, you confirm it, and you get these little tidbits delivered to your inbox, especially as we get close to college football. But a lot of things happening right now as they're breaking it down with Chris Landry. Football views from a coach, a scout, and administrator. Connect with these guys. LandryFootball.com and Landry Football on the Twitter account. Chris, man, it's always to help, man. I look up and you and I talk for 29 minutes, man, so I appreciate your opportunity.
It's always great talking with you, man. It's always great talking football. It's football season and then getting ready for football season.
No doubt. No doubt. Listen, I mean, we it's been a long offseason. We're down to 73 days. We feel like we're on the backside of the mountain when you get down to 73 days, about 25 away from SEC Media Days, about 40 away from camp starting here in T-Town.
That's right. It'll be here before you know it. Even though the weather's hot, football season's right around the corner.
Chris, have an awesome week and a weekend. Thank you, sir.
You do the same. Thanks a bunch.
Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com.